Hey everybody, welcome back to the Beyond the Peloton podcast. I'm Spencer Martin, author of the Beyond the Peloton newsletter. I'm here, as always, with Andrew Vontz from the Choose the Hard Way podcast, the Always the Hard Way newsletter. Also, Andrew's coming to us from the car. Little bit different recording quality this week, but please bear with us. I'm sure you have many thoughts about this edition of Paris-Roubaix that we watched. You wrote a wonderful piece on your newsletter about Wout van Aert winning, what it means to him, the path. I'd kind of forgotten, actually, about all the injuries. You can't keep track of them. There's so many, but he finally did it. He broke through. Won the biggest race of his career, one of the biggest races you can win. What are you feeling after this victory?
I'm thinking about some of the storylines that I don't think have been examined yet. And I know we're going to have a Micro Machines episode today, Spencer. I'm excited to dig into this with you. We've got about 20 minutes, so let's just get into it. I think one question that has surfaced, there's been a lot of discussion about Shimano Pedalgate and the Alpecin Premier Tech equipment decisions. What about Pog not having an identical one-by setup on his backup bike?
Well, what is the deal with that? Does Shimano make a one by? I'm a little fuzzy on my Shimano tech.
They do not make Durace level one by. To set up one by with Shimano, you have to do a mashup. I don't know what the exact components are. I think you're looking at probably an XTR rear derailleur and cassette with probably, I don't know. They probably have, they might make a custom front chainring because I'm sure he was running a 56 or larger.
Yeah, probably huge. That's why I was confused how he was even running one by in the first place.
Yeah.
You would imagine, though, it's not my place to tell them how to do their job. You'd imagine you probably should plan for a bike change, right, at Paris-Roubaix. So if you're going one by on one bike, maybe go one by on two.
Yeah, two is one is none, is the saying. And his backup bike had two by. So kind of strange. I don't know what the deal is there. A lot of questions as well about team tactics from UAE. Did everyone drop back fast enough? Was there confusion on race radio? What are you hearing from people inside the World Tour on this one, Spencer?
Well, they definitely didn't know. So the thing is, so he pulls off like immediately, which you're not supposed to do. Like in Johan Bernal had a good point that you're supposed to ride through the end of the sector because it's too chaotic on the actual cobbles. He pulls over right away. It's funny to see Pogačar make mistakes, but it does happen. The team definitely did not know that he was gone. Like they're just going, and then I would imagine the race radios either don't work or you can't hear anything because Niels Pollitt was like just yelling at everybody to pull over. So they clearly couldn't hear anything through the radios because the radio probably was telling them. But Andrew, did you notice? I went back. You mentioned UAE made these videos. I went back and watched the San Remo one. Pogačar crashes. They don't say on the radio, everybody pull over. They just say Pogačar crashed. So you could imagine actually it being kind of ambiguous what you're supposed to do in that situation, right?
Yeah, when I watched that video, I wondered if there was more dialogue that was cut out. So that was the main thing I wondered. Are we missing something that the team heard that they're not showing us? Because that seemed very peculiar to me. And it was very nonchalant. Just Pogačar crashed, and then next thing you know, he's chasing back, right?
I did wonder that. Yeah, maybe there's something we didn't see. But even the tone of voice, if it's loud, you're on the cobbles, maybe you don't hear that. I mean, it made sense to me having seen that video how this happened. Good thing they have Niels Pollitt. They also, we should say, they don't have their normal classics team because everybody's hurt on that team. A little bit of filling in the gaps, but Niels Pollitt, I think he's finished on the podium, or if not fourth at this race. So it's a good thing they had him. The problem with Niels Pollitt, the guy's like 6'6", so there's actually not many people in that group that Pogačar could have gotten a bike from. I guess the only one is Antonio Morgado. But watching the race, I thought, oh, Morgado screwed up. He should have given him the bike. But then he gets the Shimano bike. He finally gets back on a spare bike. And it's good they had Morgado on his bike because he could ride real fast and help pull and close the gap down. So maybe it all worked out for the best. I mean, what did you think about leaving Florian Vermeersch in the group? To me, I kind of liked it, but that's a little risky. Like you have Pogačar pulling alone, and then you have a teammate up the road. It looked a little weird.
There was a lot going on in the race, and I think it's very difficult to know what was the perfect strategy. This strategy didn't work out, so of course we can question whether it was the right one. You mentioned Morgado, and we talked about him a bit on the last episode, actually. Could you share a bit more about his palmares? Because I believe he's 22. He seems like a he's perhaps a bit more quiet and less jovial than the rest of the UAE crew, and just very focused on riding. And man, he buried himself to close that gap.
Yeah, he's a really good rider. Borderline, I mean, that's a very good piece of teamwork. There's also another component of this race is there's no young riders. Pogačar was the second youngest rider in the top 10. Part of the reason for this is guys like Antonio Morgado. He got 5th at Flanders as a teenager. I don't believe anyone's ever finished in the top 5 at Flanders as a teenager before. That's impressive. He's not, I mean, the thing about Morgado is he'll show up to these early season Portuguese races. He's a Portuguese rider. And he's like, yeah, I want to win these. And he wins them. Like, he's that good that he can just be like, you know what? I don't care who's here. I'm just going to win it. But his career now, he's a little bit of like a super domestique. He doesn't get a lot of chances for himself. And it's good for UAE that they have this rider because they used him to pull back to get Pogačar back. But it makes me a little sad because I would like to see Morgado on another team racing for himself. But it's great for Pogačar that he has guys of. It's hard to overstate the class you have if you're top fiving Tour of Flanders, one of the hardest races in the world at 19 years old. That's Paul Seychelles type stuff.
Yeah, and speaking of big rich Paul success, it would seem he does not have the body type for Roubaix in particular. Yet I just can't help but wonder, what if we have big rich Paul success? What if we get Jonas
Well,
out there plus 3 kilograms?
get Jonas out there. Well, I was thinking about this because in 2019, when Pogačar wins Tour of California and finishes third at the Vuelta, you would not have said future Roubaix contender right there, right? You just wouldn't
No.
have. You just would never have imagined it. So never say never.
Yeah,
You could see Big Rich out there. The
it could happen.
the other thing I wanted to ask you about, Pogačar's chasing on. He's in trouble a little bit. There's no one to help him. He's pulling by himself. The guy's super strong, by the way. Can you imagine pulling back a front group with a team working in it at Roubaix? That's unbelievable. Alpecen's doing a good job. They're setting the pace. Kind of looks like they're going to get to Arenberg. If they get to Arenberg without Pogačar catching on, Pogačar's in big trouble. And
Right.
it's a small group. You can pick your line through. It's a great situation for Van der Poel. And then Van der Poel attacks, drops his team. He's now isolated. It kills the pace. Like you could physically see it blunt at the front. They have no
Right.
pace because they're like, hey, Van der Poel, why'd you just try to drop us? We're not going to work with you. Why did that happen? Like, was he imagining I'm going to ride solo from 110K to go? Was he panicking and just wanted to get to Arenberg before Pogačar and thought the best way to do that is solo? I was really shocked by that. And then it caused problems later because he flats and he doesn't have a teammate with him and he grabs. I mean, Jasper disaster strikes again, right? He never should have pulled over to give a guy a bike that he knew didn't have the right pedals or the right cleats to clip into the pedals.
Yeah, real Keystone Cops moment there. My read on why Van der Poel made the move at that moment, I was thinking back to last year, and the thing I remember most about the Arenberg Forest and the 2025 edition of the race is that that was where very briefly Wout made an acceleration, and then that's where his race ended. He just started to go backwards immediately, and I was wondering if Van der Poel felt this is the moment to dispatch my remaining
Yeah.
rivals, and this is where it goes. Like, it's going down right now. I win the race now. And instead, you got the front flat, you got the pedal gate, and then you got the second flat. Not an optimal day in the Arenberg Forest for Mathieu van der
No,
Poel.
no. And in that moment, you just got to get out of the forest and he's getting multiple flats. Not
Yeah,
great.
and Spencer, to
So
that
on Van
point,
Aert, that's actually a very good point you
yeah,
bring
go
up.
ahead.
Last year, he blew up. in the Arenberg after the Arenberg because the 100K before he was really out of position the whole time. This is in
Right.
2025. Like really dumping a lot of energy, just trying to catch. He was like always getting split off. This year, in amazing position for the 100K before Arenberg. And did you see Matthew Brennan's lead out? Visma clearly, like the whole race was around getting Van Aert first into Arenberg. That lead out was unbelievable. And then they even had Van Aert pass in the corner. Brennan sits up. His race is over right there, but he kind of gets in the way and no one can come around Van Aert. That was super impressive. That's really where the race was won.
Yeah, this is something they've been planning for not just for 1 year, but for many years, which is in high contrast to some of the things I heard mentioned in the Flow Sports broadcast about EF, which it sounds like did one recon prior to this event, and it sounds like most of their team is actually in Boulder right now. Now, that may just be a realistic optic on their chances at the race, but I think what we see is if you want to win Paris-Roubaix or any of these highly technical classics, this is a multi-year project.
Well, yeah, and you could even see in the final tough one, the Carrefour de l'Arbre, you could tell Van Aert looked so much more comfortable on the cobblestones versus Pogačar, which is weird to see Pogačar ever look uncomfortable, right? But preparation, like Van Aert's been doing this his whole life, essentially preparing for this race, and Pogačar is a relative newcomer. Yeah, yeah, I know we don't want to trash EF, but yeah, the one recon ride probably is not going to be sufficient for great success at this race, I would imagine. Especially compared to Visma. I was kind of blown away by Visma's too, their ability. A lot of these guys are very good themselves. Brennan, Laporte, and they all seemed all in on Van Aert. You know, they just were really united behind the goal of getting Van Aert to win because they probably realized no one else is good enough to beat Pogačar and Van der Poel.
Yeah, and in Wout's non-English interview, which they included in the Visma after the race behind the scenes documentary, he said something really interesting. And he said, this is the culmination of a life's work. And even before I saw that, the feeling that I had when Wout crossed the line and won without fully grasping the magnitude of the backstory and his motivation, which is what I wrote about in my Substack this week, and what we might all take away from that, it does seem to me that this is the greatest victory of Wout van Aert's entire career. What do you think, Spencer?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Which is crazy to say at first because he won the double Ventoux stage at the Tour de France. He won on the Champs Elysees twice. He won a time trial stage, a sprint stage, and a mountain stage in the same tour. And I would say hands down, this is the biggest win of his career.
Hands down.
You know, hands down, not even close. I mean, if you think about winning Roubaix, how many races realistically are even, what's a bigger win than that? Like winning the Tour de France overall, pretty much. Like World Championships,
And
maybe about
not,
equal. Flanders, maybe about
yeah,
equal.
not only that, but looking ahead, because we're going to have to wrap this up here in a moment. Another thought that I had following the race is now that Wout has slayed the dragon, he's beaten peak Pog at an event that was the absolute focus of Pog's season up until this moment. I believe we're going to see Wout van Aert as road world champion fall 2026.
Fall 2026. I don't know. That course is a little tough, but we'll see. I would say watch out for I think he could have a big tour. Big tour. We could see the return. Remember what was that 2022, 23 where he was just riding poor Quinn Simmons off his wheel. I mean, I frankly had forgotten that he broke his ankle this year in
Yeah,
2026. Had
yeah,
surgery on it. Like that is unbelievable.
yeah. It was unbelievable. The last thing I want to say, the Mathieu van der Poel post race interview, if you haven't watched it, definitely watch the race. Man, he was so gassed. I mean, you would expect that he's gassed. He just raced Roubaix. I think that this edition of the race underscored a few things. Number one, having air in your tires is very important. And I think
So fast, right? An inflated tire.
yeah, something that
Yeah.
all of these teams need to look into. We can talk about that in a future episode, what's going on there. And of course, I'm sure you saw that the hottest tech now is to use tubular glue to glue the sidewalls of tubeless tires onto the rim because, they just tend to blow off
Yeah,
the
they'll
rim.
pop
Not
off.
real safe. So there's something going on there that we could talk about in the future. Having
If
air in your tires, very important.
if only there was
And
a tire technology that you could glue right onto the rim,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
that would be something else. So that's exciting. We'll see what happens with that. And what else is on your mind before we sign off here, Spence?
I would say the hot take is if last week's was Remco Evenepoel, ride of the day at Flanders, Remco Evenepoel, ride of the day at Flanders, Mathieu van der Poel. That guy was 2 minutes down coming out of the forest, finished 15 seconds down, basically pulled the whole time. Unbelievable ride from van der Poel.
Yeah,
Just
unbelievable.
just needed a little bit more air. I actually can't. The thing I can't wrap my head around is like this was an amazing victory from Van Aert. Think about all the things that had to go right though. It's mind-boggling to me that anyone has won 4 of these. Like, to have
Yeah,
that go right 4 times, it's crazy.
yeah. It has to be the most complicated one day race,
Yes.
which is why we all love it so much. And you know what a passion I have for races that take place in bleak rural areas. So this is
Expensive
really
rural
yeah.
areas. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of where I like to spend my time and money as a cycling fan and as a participant in gravel events. So Spence, thanks for taking a moment to catch up about this one. I'm excited. Just, we were just recently talking about, maybe we weren't. The world has been talking a lot, including some other professional athletes have been talking about Pog is making professional cycling boring. I think we have the ultimate counterexample here. I never believed that for 1 second. I think this is the greatest era of professional cycling in the history of humankind, maybe that we'll ever see. And I'm just so excited for what the rest of the season is going to bring. And that's not even counting the Lifetime Grand Prix.
That is a very good point. We it just felt like we got a lot of whinging, right? Oh, Pogačar is ruining cycling. And then two of the last 3 monuments have maybe been the best races I've ever seen in my life. So things are good. I would say if I was going to pick nits about this Roubaix, I still think San Remo was a better race because once Van Aert and Pogačar were alone, it was a little. It took what is usually like high tension part of Roubaix. And it's like, okay, we know these guys are going to make it to the Velodrome together probably, and they're going to sprint. So the last hour was a little bit like, it is building tension because you're waiting, but you're not seeing, it just did not seem like either could accelerate realistically on the cobbles and drop the other one. Like
Right.
we kind of knew where it was going, but it's still, I mean, to see, I would say we are lucky to see these guys like Van Aert, Pogačar, Van der Poel, Mads Pedersen duking it out against each other. We're going to get to the Giro d'Italia. We're not going to have best on best. Usually you don't have that. So we are so lucky to see these guys racing. Like Pogačar, like thank you for donating your time, Tadej Pogačar, because
Yeah.
this would have been boring without you.
Yeah. Absolutely. One more thing before we go. Again, in the post race interview, Wout talked about how multiple times once Pog was back on, he just felt like this is it. I'm getting dropped. I can't hold on for one more second. Anybody who's ever ridden with another human being, been on a group ride, been in a race, done anything difficult at all in your life, you've had that feeling. And I think that this is a reminder that when those moments arise, and they always do in any worthy endeavor, just hang on and just keep going because that's what Wow did. And that's what all this can do.
Yeah.
And yeah, so just keep digging, keep going. And if you don't already follow my Substack, the link is in Spencer's Substack. I'm writing more about professional cycling and kind of my takes on it now, and will be in the coming months. So please give me a follow, and you can also follow me at Hardway Pod. And Spence, great to be here with you as always, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, and if you keep publishing great pieces about pro cycling, you will get a cease and desist from Beyond the Peloton newsletter. We can't have you putting these great things out. No, it was a great read. I thought it really had me remember how much Van Aert has missed from. You said like what did you say? A total of like 7 months in the last 3
Yeah,
years
a
or something.
cumulative 7 months in the last 3 years. He's been out of competition, recovering from severe injuries.
God,
Yeah,
that is unbelievable. It's also funny that we're like the little engine that could. Wout van Aert, one of the most touted juniors of all time, only
right.
guy I've ever seen to win 3 different types of stages of the Tour de France. But it was incredible that he's come back from these injuries. That's a great
He's back,
message.
baby. Yeah.
Well, we wish you our best, Andrew, and thank you for joining from the car in a time crunched part of your day.